Good to see you all. Last week I talked a little bit about drawing skills. So this month's project is still live, so if you fancy coming to still live, that'd be nice to see. Quite a few people brought things in, which is great. So last week I talked a little bit about drawing, and I'm just going to do a little bit more on the drawing theme, and then start some painting. So I've picked this as my still life. I thought today the painting bit I'll do something like just fairly simple objects, light and shadow, things like that, things that are fairly texture. And then another week I'll go into sort of painting glass and painting reflections, so I'll do a bit of that next week. And then perhaps the week after do a little bit about textures. I thought today just a little bit of a quick recap on the drawing skills, and particularly measuring, because quite a lot of people weren't here last week. So what I did last week is I showed you a very direct way of measuring, whereby you're basically kind of using something to measure with, like a pencil and something to draw with, and you close one eye and you keep one arm outstretched like that, and then you can then transfer those measurements onto your drawing or your board. So that is one, and you can basically measure everything that way, just transfer it. So that's last week. A slight development of that is to sort of pick something that you. So the problem with that is that sometimes things can come out too small on the board, or you find that it all goes off the page. So the way I tend to work is I tend to pick something, and I use that as a unit of measurement. So in this case, I'm going to use the width of this particular bottle, and that will be like my unit of measurement. And then I'll see how big everything else is in proportion to that, or in relation to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, actually, I want the bottle to be about that wide. So rather than just about that wide, it's going to be a bit wider. And I think if I have it that wide, everything should fit on the painting. Okay. So basically, I would measure that, like that, and then I would compare, say, the width to the height. So basically, I'm holding that measurement, and then just lining my thumb up at the bottom of the bottle, and then just trying to memorise whereabouts the top of the pencil comes to, and it comes to about there. And then I go back to kind of step up to that position, and if I do that, it fits in about twice. Yeah, so I've decided on that width. I need to then, maybe I'll start there, and that should, if I measure off twice, that should give me the sort of the height of the bottle I want. So I'll come to there. This is a square bottle, so it's a bit easier to draw than the round one. Slightly rounded on the. Right. So the other thing I talked about, actually, I'll do that on another one. So that's where the cork's going to be, and then the bottle, the neck of the bottle's there, and just getting that kind of rounded shape. So what I'll probably do is a little bit of acrylic painting in a minute. So I find that with a pastel pencil, it's quite easy to make adjustments. So you can use graphite pencils, but they can get a bit smeary, particularly on canvas. It's hard to move them. So a pastel pencil will move things around a lot easier. So that's the width of that. I could then compare that with the size of the orange, and I can see that the orange is a bit bigger. So I need to sort of think, well, the orange starts about there. So that's the width of the bottle, and then that just needs to come out a little bit wider. That's the sort of size that's going to be. And then, you know, I can kind of carry on from there. I could check the apple. The apple's a bit smaller than that, so I'm just going to guess that. Actually, if I measure the apple and just see how far. So basically, I'll just kind of, it basically comes to about there. So if I bring that back, and this technique I find really useful. I was painting in Lee yesterday, doing a big kind of street scene, and what I was doing was I was sort of measuring one building and just seeing how many times that would go across. So it's a really great way of just keeping everything in proportion. And it's still a technique that I find is invaluable to keep, you know, to be able to see where everything fits in proportion. So that's going to come to about there. The other thing I mentioned last week was drawing ellipses. So I'll just very quickly draw an ellipse up here, which is going to be about there. So this upturned jug, what I find is, so actually the width of that isn't too different from the width of the bottle. So that's how wide I want that top bit to be. If I just divide that in two, and then just pop in a line, like a centre line, just give me a bit of a guide. And then I can see how much space there is from the front to the back, that, and then just compare that to the width. So that's about a third. So I can say that wants to be about a third of that. Maybe that's a bit too wide. So I can measure that, 1, 2, that's about a third. And then to get that nice elliptical shape, I've got to line that way, and then I find if I just get that nice sort of tight radius there, and then the tighter radius there, and then just gradually bring those out. So that's the way that I find is a nice, easy way to get a nice regular shape. And it takes a bit of practice to get that to work smoothly. And then from that, we can just draw the rest of that. So that's a bit of a drawing, and that should probably fit. Probably looking at that now, it would have been better if it was slightly further over and there's a bit more into the handle, but that will do. Maybe I'll twist the handle around. So I'll just do this little bit here with the painting, and then next week I'll paint some of these other bits. Okay. So get a couple of brushes. So I'm actually using acrylics. It doesn't really matter what you use. Use whichever medium you fancy using. Let's get a couple of brushes out. So this blue, I know a few weeks back we did a little bit on colour mixing. To me this is quite a greeny blue. It's like a cerulean type blue. There's shadow here, so I want to maybe mix a little bit of ultramarine in with that. And maybe a tiny bit of brown just to tone that down, just so it's not too bright. So I think that's the short shadow colour. I tend to get some background in first if I can. You know, so it's up to you. Some people do it the other way around. They'll paint the fruit and then pop the background around it. Tend to work this way, and then to get the lighter blue, just add a little bit of light, a little bit of white in with the cerulean, because there's quite a lot of light reflecting off the surface. So it's something a bit like that. It's not completely, you know, there's a bit of texture in this cloth. So that's where the shadow would be. Maybe it's quite a good idea to maybe half close your eyes. I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow to that as well, just to make it slightly greeny, just to vary that a little bit. It's not dead flat. Back to the original mix. And just a little bit in there. Really, probably best to work background to foreground, pop these in first, but I thought this is the simpler thing to paint, so I'll demonstrate this today and then we'll go to the other. That's another day. That tiny bit stronger. Okay, and then with the orange itself, there's quite a lot of shadow here. So the light, unfortunately it's a bit flat, the light in this room, but it's mostly coming from above. So the shadow's under here. A little bit of highlight here, and then cast shadow. So I've got a ready mixed orange that I'm going to add a little bit of brown to, just to make that a little bit darker. So just under here it's a little bit darker. Give me a bit more of that. And I'm sort of half closing my eyes, adding a tiny bit of red into that as well. So that's as far as the shadow goes, so it goes around here a little bit. And then I'm going to gradually add the orange back in. I should go for a slightly cleaner brush now on that lighter. That's a bit too light. It needs a bit more yellow, I think. That's a bit too reddy. So this is actually a bit of cadmium orange, which is a real, very strong colour. It's proper cadmium, which is a very opaque colour. So you'll find with the paints, student quality paint won't be proper cadmium, so it'll be a lot more transparent. And then if you get an artist quality one, they'll be a lot more opaque. And I just want to try and blend that in a little bit. Just all that dry, so just working that in. I don't particularly worry about textures. You know, if you want to try and get a texture, but I'm not really that worried. As long as it's light and dark, I think they're the things that are most important. What there is a little bit of here is there's a little bit of a highlight. So where and it's not pure white, it's just a lighter, slightly lighter orangey yellow. So I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight just about here.
Or could you lift it up with a tissue or something?
Well, if it was watercolour, you could. Yeah, with watercolour, yeah, you could do that. Yeah. Or just if the paint was, if it was watercolour and it was, you know, it's still wet, you might be able to just lift it out with a brush or tissue. This is acrylic, so this I can actually just sort of physically, and I'll paint this exactly the same. If it was oil paint, it's the same approach with oil paint. So that's basically how I go about painting the orange. The one thing I do notice though is that where the orange just touches the cloth, it's even darker. So I just want a really dark bit of shadow just underneath there. So a bit of blue and brown and a tiny bit of black in there. And you get that really dark just there. The acrylics will dry. It's quite hard to blend acrylics because this is probably dried now, but I might be able to just use my fingers a little bit, just soften that out. Soften that edge a little bit. So, okay, so enough today. Yeah. So next week I'll do a little bit on these things like the glass, painting glass and painting reflected chrome type surfaces. Any questions? Okay. Sorry, stop that.